Hello, welcome everybody. This is the final episode of our season 1 of Arcview Access, and really excited that you can all join us here today. I know some of you are just kind of rolling in as we're opening up this program. So I'm going to get started by just saying, well, first of all, the topic today is vapes and cannabis tech innovations. And as I said, this is wrapping up our season 1, which has been just an incredible journey. And we've spent some real quality time together. We've experienced things in history that no one has ever done, from this global health crisis to civil and social unrest and a call for change, to our children playing outside again, and virtual graduation parties, which I've been to a few this year. Not sure if you have, but quite an interesting time we're living in. Our world has certainly transformed, and we spend a lot more time at home and in front of our screens. And actually, sometimes going out feels a little awkward and unsettling. But one thing that is now a constant and something you can count on is our commitment to you to provide you with information and the tools that you need to connect in the cannabis industry and to make really sound investments. So if we take a look back over our season 1, we had the honor of showcasing some just amazing leaders and incredible companies in this industry. We kicked off on March 25th. It seems like so long ago. It was our first ever digital program, and we had 3 amazing industry leaders from Caliva, Weedmaps, and Ease. And what they did back in March is they tried to predict what the next few months would look like. And we certainly got most of it wrong, but a few things we did get right. One of which is that cannabis was deemed essential, and that now is the time to double down. We also had a chance to bring you some celebrities right into your living room, right to your own PC. And that was Marv Washington and Isaiah Thomas. And we did that in a way that's really never been done before. For me, that was an incredible show. To be able to see Isaiah at his house with his kids and his dog, it was priceless. We also unpacked some really great and new opportunities in cannabis, from turnarounds to innovations in science, food and beverage, investing around the globe, and what this new normal could look like. And no season would be complete without a deep dive into the federal reform and what regulatory landscape could look like in the near term. So all of these programs were put together with you in mind. We asked you what you wanted to see, and we listened and we delivered. Season 2, I promise you, which is kicking off in September, is going to be even more exciting and more impactful. In season 1, we really found our genius, which was to provide you with these digital experiences and, as I said, the tools that you need to invest with confidence in cannabis. So I want to say thank you. Thank you to the 10,000 plus people that have registered or tuned in to our shows over the last few months. And I want to say thank you to everyone who has supported this, from these amazing companies and industry leaders that you're going to hear from today, and to our sponsors who have really supported us to bring this quality program. So our sponsor today is Greentank Technologies. And Greentank believes that great extracts need great hardware. They're designed in North America. They develop and manufacture innovative, high-performance vaporization technology exclusive to the cannabis industry. They provide licensed producers and extractors with state-of-the-art vaporization technology engineered specifically for each brand's extract formulation. So not only are they a sponsor, but they're also an expert in this space, and we get to hear more from them on the panel, as well as in Jake's Corner later today. So as a special thank you, and also to end this great season, Greentank is running a 10% discount to anyone who's watching this program on their first Greentank order. And this offer is valid through the end of August, and so just email sales@greentanktech.com. Before we get on with the show and introducing our moderator and our expert panel that we have, a few housekeeping items. So first of all, this program is going to run for 75 minutes. I know that's a little longer than the hour that we're used to, but we've got a lot to cover, and we've got some really great insights with BDSA, and Roy will be presenting those at the end. So I want you to stay tuned. If you need to take that quick break, do it now. So here's what we have in store. 75 minutes, we got the panel presentation, we have BDSA, we've got Jake's Corner with Greentank, and at the very end of this, we're gonna post up some things for you. So I want you to stay with us. We're gonna have some special offers, and then also we're gonna have a survey. And so the 10th person who completes that survey in honor of our 10th anniversary will be getting a copy of Steve D'Angelo's book, The Cannabis Manifesto. We're going to be sending that to you digitally. This is a must read for anyone and really everyone in the cannabis space. So without further ado, let's get on with the show. So our distinguished moderator, and thank you so much, is AC Braddock. AC became CEO of Eden Labs in 2009, and as a result, she immediately became the default business developer for extraction technology in the pre-rec cannabis industry. It was clear to her that the lack of safe, sustainable, science-based product development and extraction technology in the industry would significantly slow medical legalization and normalization for this industry. So AC, thank you so much. Please take it from here. And you're on mute.
There we go. Hey, everybody, how's it going? Beautiful day here in Seattle. Hope it's a nice sunny day too, wherever you are. I'm very excited about this panel. The industry has come a very long way in the 12 plus years I've been involved, and I'm excited for this panel. The first person I would like to introduce is Sally Parker Nichols. She is the president of sales and distribution for Bloom Farms. They have quite a number of products from full spectrum to broad spectrum and isolate. And I'm going to define what those things mean after I introduce the panelists. She was an early investor in the industry from 2014 and has stakes in many companies and has taken quite a few startups from ideation through full development. And what she does a lot is she has extensive history in sales, retail channel development, data analysis, compliance, and fulfillment. The next panelist is the co-founder of, he's the co-founder of Perfect Blends, and he is the chief product officer. Michael Bax. Michael has a long history in cannabis, which I'm very excited to have him on today. He's been researching cannabis since the 1970s, and he is the author of Cannabis Pharmacy. And one of the reasons I'm really excited to have him on is because most people who have a long background in cannabis understand that the end product is, it's imperative that you start with genetics and move all the way through. So we're going to be able to talk to him quite a bit about what all that means. And Perfect Blends focuses on terpene preservation, which gets to the genetics part of this for pre-rolls and then also for vape use. And then we'll have Peter Druckett, who is the chief engineer at Greentank. And he spent 16 years at Dyson working in structural engineering and thermal fluid analysis, and came on to Greentank in February this year, and he and they are very focused on bringing new technologies to vaping and the hardware, especially around safety and temperature controls, dosing, etc. So just so that we have a basis for our conversation, for those of you who may not know, there's some tag words like full spectrum. And full spectrum is a product that has, it matches the plant as much as possible. It has all the cannabinoids, all the terpenes in it, and then has THC. That's the most important thing, since that is what differentiates full spectrum from broad spectrum being a full cannabinoid terpene profile without THC. And then you have an isolate, which is a singular molecule. So you have just CBD or just THCA or just THC. And then you have distillate, which is a purification of a crude oil that is not quite isolate, but a lot of the other components could be removed, often almost all of the terpenes, depending on how it's done. So write down your questions as we go through. All of the questions in this are important, no matter how basic they may seem. So extraction and vape pen industry, and as far as an investment into this and what market development looks like, is complicated because we have many, many markets, especially if you're going when one state or multiple states or international. So what may be a good product for one market may not be a good product for another market. There are sophisticated markets that have been around for a while that understand the differences between full spectrum and broad spectrum. They know about the other cannabinoids, they know what terpenes are, and then you have brand new markets that don't really know any of that. And it's exciting because you can develop that market and have and create market share for yourself. But we will get more into this as we go. And one thing I would like for everybody to keep in mind is that the cannabis industry is based in health and wellness. It was based in a medical program, and we have moved to adult use, which I like to call lifestyle, because people use it to relax, they use it to sleep, they use it to get off of other medications. There's multiple different uses, so it is not just a recreational product. My first question, to help also give us a scope of what we're talking about, goes to Peter. And Peter, can you describe to us the different kinds of vaping methods that there are out there?
Sorry, I'll take off mute. But yeah, absolutely. I think the best way of describing this is to talk about it in evolutionary terms. So, of course, cannabis and cannabis consumption has been around for hundreds, possibly thousands of years. But really, we've got things like portable, desktop, pens, and various. Those are the categories and various subcategories. So I think maybe start from kind of the larger of the devices, the desktops. Now, I think really majority, we started out, the majority of cannabis consumption was from dry flower and dried products. And in terms of consumption, people were started using certain glassware products as well. In the home, it wasn't something that could be consumed openly outdoors. And so the products that came about were to enhance the experience. Those desktop products were large. They were used AC power, so you had to plug them in. Used convective heating, and they were mainly targeted for dry herb consumption. You would typically have to grind it up and put it in the heated chamber, and you would heat up between 100 to 200 degrees C up to 400 degrees Fahrenheit, and they were great. But obviously, as the sort of market opened up, things became legalized. People wanted to be little more mobile. You'd have to be pretty committed to take your desktop appliance and take it out to used for consumption. So, then came the emergence of portable devices, and of course, there's a few evolutions with that in the way that the cannabis product itself was moving away, or not moving away. There was other extracts available, waxes, oils, to be able to carry the product in a more convenient package, and also the emergence of battery technology as well, which meant you could get high-powered devices, but you can make them portable. And what I mean by portable, they probably started off with what we would call box mods, 510 cartridge fits that would typically be used for oil, but you could also use dry herbs and wax and shatter, which are kind of semi-solid states. And then came the emergence of dab rigs, if you were familiar with that term, which are used for wax and shatters. Now they used, the original box mod rigs would use temperature control, although pseudo temperature control, I would argue as an engineer that they actually control power rather than temperature, but we can get onto that a little bit later in terms of the importance of temperature. And the dab rigs would use things like ceramic or quartz type heat beds. They use conductive heating, and again temperature control to get to vaporize those wax and shadows, those semi-solid extracts. Although whether you're a user or not, I think I would argue that the dab rigs are more for the connoisseur, the pro user, those that are used to consumption, because they can be quite intense. So that's, of course, going along with the evolutionary chain. We're trying to get things more mobile, more compact. As the market becomes, it's more socially acceptable and also legal to take and consume cannabis outdoors. And
vape pens actually helped with that, right? Vape pens helped it be more socially acceptable.
Exactly. Right? I think, it's a bit of a chicken and egg. I'm not sure what came first, but certainly as soon as a legal market came available, then people wanted to take it out and about, carry it with them and consume it as and when. So of course, you could argue pens as well are portable devices, but they're just the next evolution. They're smaller, and they generally use oils, and they can come in various different forms. There's the disposable all-in-ones, battery heating element, cartridges, the 510 cartridges, which you're probably more familiar with, which are sold through dispensaries and will contain the oil and the heating element, and you connect it up to a battery of your choice. And then an evolution to closed loop systems, or pods, as you might be more familiar with. Certainly if you look across the e-cigarette industry and the likes of Juul, it's the same sort of type of systems that have been used for consuming cannabis oils. And there are some others. I think if we look across to types of devices that have been developed for the medical device industry, because vapes, vape pens haven't really been agreed upon or deemed used for safe for medical devices. You have other products that called nebulizers, which are quite interesting from a technical point of view, where they don't use heat, but they rely on atomizing a liquid form. So the viscosity needs to be really, really low, and then therefore the amount of THC, CBD, or cannabis products in that fluid is small. So it minimizes some of the effects, but it's quite interesting the fact that it uses a piezo atomizer. It's basically vibration, and creates small droplets to be consumed as well.
Yeah, I mean,
but
go ahead. Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say it's interesting just because it doesn't use heat to consume.
Yeah, it's obviously become very, very clear that it's crucial that these oils are safe and clean and pure, because, as you just said, there's definitely a crossover between everyday use and medical use. And Sally, can you just describe to us, and we talked about what kind of hardware and how the different ways we can vape, but what goes in there? What are the different kinds of things that can go in to these this hardware?
Well, that's a great question. I just wanted to say one thing to the audience first. I know you guys, Arcview has served a really important role in the growth of cannabis. And as you mentioned earlier, I'm both an investor and a day-to-day operator. I actually started my very first investment through Arcview. I invested in Ebu when it was worth $10 million, and it sold last year for $490 million to Canopy. So I just want to thank you guys. And then I went on to make a couple other investments, Bloom Farms, Pax, Jewel, et cetera. But I really want to thank you guys for the role that you play, not only in education, but access and transparency. So those of you that are watching, Arcview has really done great things for the space, and it's an amazing opportunity for you guys to get in and see who's doing what, when, where, and where you might fit as an investor.
Yeah, thank you for that. I have known the founders for many years, have served on boards with them. I know they're personal, they're awesome people.
Yep.
And that spreads throughout the whole organization.
Yeah.
Very transparent and up and great. So thank you for that.
Agreed. So first of all, Bloom Farms is a cannabis company, and we have THC products in the California market. We also have hemp products in the CBD market. And the reason that I'm kind of setting it up this way is when I talk about what we do, we have a bifurcated supply chain. So we create vape products that work for cannabis, and we have vape products that work for hemp. When you talk about vape as a form factor, people vape lots of things. And I think when you look at kind of VapeGate and the issues that we had last year, vape is a form factor, much like a Toyota truck is a form factor. It's a type of vehicle. And when people say that, vape does X, Y, and Z, it's healthy, it's not healthy, it's, people died from vape. I think you have to be really specific to your point, AC. What are you vaping? Many people vape nicotine alongside, vaping cannabis and alongside, vaping CBD. And what is in your cartridge, what is inside Greentank is everything. When we launched the CBD side of our business and we really started looking at vape broadly, it enabled us to look at what's in vape shops, what people are smoking in smoke shops and vape shops across the country. We realized there's a lot of confusion and a lot of kind of do-it-yourself made-at-home stuff that goes into vape rigs and vape carts, cartridges. In a regulated cannabis market, we have very specific criteria by which we can create product, by which we can buy supply chain, create oil, fill hardware, test that hardware, and provide it on the market for consumers. So for Bloom Farms, and we're going to talk first on the cannabis side, we create products that leverage CO2 oil, which is a form of extraction, alongside hydrocarbon extracted products. And basically, we're at the point in the industry, or early on, we were almost exclusively a CO2 company. And we were creating, our goal was to create oil that was as close to the original plant as possible. And as the industry has evolved, we've been able to kind of mix things up and create new formulations. So now, there's lots of different ways to create oil products, and it's really based on what is your desired outcome, what is your brand promise, what level of consistency do you want to provide to your consumer in terms of a repeatable experience, and what is your commitment to, to the raw material that you're sourcing from. So, I guess I would just start by saying we start with the best raw material possible, the best biomass. And it's from that biomass we decide if we're going to make, a live resin product, which is basically extracted from fresh frozen flower. Or if we want to make a single origin product, which is a CO2 extracted product from a very particular strain of cannabis. And it's really geared around, really geared on what your brand promise is and what experience you want to have. One of the big trends in California cannabis right now is kind of moving towards live resin and high terpene products. And we're realizing, and the consumer most importantly is realizing, that the driver of your experience in vape isn't necessarily just the THC. It's the full cannabinoidal profile. It's, you know, the 137 plus active cannabinoids that are in a cannabis plant synergistically working together to not only create a taste profile, but an actual physical experience. So
that's really a defining factor between a sophisticated market and a new market too, right? Because the new markets, they're focused on the THC, and they haven't learned yet that the THC alone is really boring. And and then you have to have the other cannabinoids in there and the other terpene profiles, because that is what determines, especially terpenes, the effect of what you're going to have. Right?
That's actually a great point, because when we did, you know, we have our CBD vape line, and our CBD vape line, to your point, is a broad spectrum line, which means it has less than 0.03% THC. So it's not going to get you high, but what it is clearly doing, because we pull all the active cannabinoids over and it is a higher terpene product, people are feeling a physical experience from it. They are feeling relief. They're feeling relaxation. It's de-stressing. So as the market becomes more sophisticated, to your point, AC, it's really less about how high can I get and what is the quality of my experience. And this spans out into how is the medical market impacted when a recreational market comes online, and vice versa. The medical benefits of cannabis aren't just tied to the THC. You need the full range, the full spectrum of a product to truly understand the benefits, both from a leisure side and also from a medical side.
Yeah, to be able to pull all those cannabinoids and terpenes into our endocannabinoid systems, which is the key to all of this and how this works.
Yeah, it's so changing. I mean, we're learning so much, and honestly, like I have to say, one of the groups that we've learned a lot from is our lab partner. You know, and I think that, you know, for those of you listening, labs are responsible for doing your final certificate of analysis testing, and they validate that there aren't pesticides or heavy metals or filth or foreign matter or microbials in your oil, and it enables you to put a safe product on the market. But when you're innovating and when you're evolving and you're looking at, you know, why are these products giving people different experiences, we've actually, you know, have quite a relationship with our lab in evolution and learning about our oil, about CBN, about CBG, about THCA, anyway, Delta 8, Delta 9. So
all of them.
I know. I was like,
and I think you hit on a point that's really that's crucial in this industry and marketing to this industry, and that is the why. Why does your business exist? Why does your brand exist? Why do you make products the way that you make them? Because transparency and trust is what modern business is now. Mm-hmm. So, and I want to talk to you a little bit later about more about that, because what Bloom does is, you're a fine example of what every business should be doing. But I wanted to transition over to understanding the terpenes profiles, and we've been talking about terpenes, and basically terpenes are the essential oils that come off of any plant, not just cannabis. But it has been determined that it's something called the entourage effect, that the terpenes are very important in the effect of what you experience. And there are different kinds of terpenes. There are monoterpenes, the sesquiterpenes. And I was wondering, Michael, if you could tell us about why you think it's important from plant to end product about matching those terpenes, and what your top 3 terpenes are. I mean, a lot of companies now on more sophisticated markets are labeling their top 3 to 5 terpene profiles. They're labeling their top 3 to 5 cannabinoid profiles, so people learn and know what they're actually imbibing. So tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. So as you said, monoterpenes and sesquiterpenes are some of the key essential oils produced by flowering plants. in this case cannabis. They're really important because some of them, and not all of them, but some of them are quite pharmacologically active. Others just serve as kind of aroma compounds or flavor compounds. And in fact, they're used in the flavoring and fragrance industry quite widely. The thing about matching the terpene profiles of the living plant and why it's important is simply because there's a tendency when you're formulating cannabis concentrates to unnecessarily and sometimes unsafely increase the concentration of certain essential oils to spike the flavor, aroma, and effect. However, you have to look at the pharmacology of these compounds and the safety profile of these compounds when you're making these decisions. And the unfortunate thing is that when you heat these compounds, you're expecting them to behave like they do in traditional methods of using the plant. And it's kind of like putting Chanel No. 5 under your broiler and expecting it to behave the same. What happens is at high temperatures, these compounds break down into their constituent isoprene units. Then those isoprene units form toxicants like methacrolene, methylvinyl ketone. There are lots of these things. You don't want to be inhaling these things. And therefore, temperature control becomes incredibly important when you're consuming these products, whether you're smoking or vaping. And one of the things that I've seen coming out of the Portland State study, which is kind of the fundamental study on the behavior of cannabis concentrates at temperature, is the lower the temperature, the better. And that's just the way it is. I mean, I thought the experimental design from the Portland State study was outstanding, and the results should be taken very seriously. The other issue is about cannabis monoterpenes and sesquiterpenes is protecting them. Monoterpenes especially. They are incredibly sensitive.
Very delicate.
They're very delicate. In 45 days after you harvest the flower, you've lost over 50% of your myrcene in shelf stability testing if you keep the product at room temperature. And so what I do in my work is I'm the protector of terpenes. I like to make sure that they stay there and they get into the consumer. And I'm learning a lot. It's really been interesting. I have asthma, so I have to be really careful about the concentrations of these compounds because I can get a lot of lung irritation from them. And the medical literature shows now that we really have to be careful about the concentration of terpenes because they can be significant pulmonary irritants.
Yeah, and there's a lot of companies in the last 6 months I've seen, or a year really, they're adding in terpenes back in, typically to a distillate product because they've destroyed the terpene profile in that over extraction, in my opinion. And so they have to add the terpenes back in, and when they do, they add far more than what would be naturally occurring in the plant, which is not healthy. And
yeah, I'll give you an example. I mean, the biggest example is limonene. One of the most common terpenes in cannabis and one of the most pharmacologically active is a spectacular engine degreaser. And so you want to really be careful what concentration, something that's used to get the grease off a diesel engine when you're inhaling it in your lungs.
Yeah, I mean, terpenes are light hydrocarbons. You can do extractions with terpenes as a solvent as well.
There's a guy using a limonene process.
Exactly, to your point about scrubbing. So what are your top three and why for you personally? I mean,
myrcene, because most people know it and so few have experienced it. It's so delicate that it's one of the if you take a high myrcene plant and extract it, you are racing against the clock to have it still there before it breaks down. And so myrcene has a really interesting effect. For years, everybody said it was a sedative effect. In fact, it's not at all. And it actually behaves like a cannabinoid because it's interacting with a trip receptor, a thermoreceptor, and it's actually behaving like a cannabinoid. Limonene, just because it's so spectacularly euphoric. And then one you've never heard of, alpha-theugene, which none of the labs in California can even test for because there's no reference standard for it. But it's associated with some of the old school varieties like Haze and Blue Dream, and is really potentially very, very interesting terpene, but nobody even knows about it.
Well, a lot of people don't know a lot about a lot of terpenes, actually, right? I mean, one of my favorites is pinene. And, you know, just so some of the audience who doesn't really experience that, I mean, you go out into the woods, you know, where there are a lot of cedar or pine trees, and you can breathe that in and you feel a sense of relaxation and also a little bit of stimulation. And that's what happens when you also imbibe these terpenes in cannabis. And linalool, which is the primary terpene in lavender, it's relaxing. You know, you go into any spa or resort and they have some piped in smells, you can guarantee that there's going to be some linalool in there. So
what's great about it is it's the clinical evidence for linalool is spectacular. We
yeah,
don't have a lot of clinical evidence for a lot of these terpenes yet, but the few that we do, we should pay close attention to, because they have potent physiological outcomes.
well, thank you for that. And aside from, well, I had one antidote to that. I was part of a thing called the Terp Festival here in Seattle, and we were fortunate to have Ethan Russo live right here, who wrote the paper on the Entourage effect back in like 2011, and I got to be one of the judges, and I had to judge over 40 different entrants and flower and oils, and it was very interesting. It was such an amazing learning experience, imbibing one and feeling really happy and talkative and laughing, and then taking another one, and I would be like, oh. And then I would try another one and I'd be happy and laughing. And it's like, it's really evident once you start experimenting with these things on how, and the feeling that you want to have, and the more you know about them, the better they are. And, you know, that gets into a whole education process as a brand. But aside from the experience, Peter, what are some of the other things that people need to be thinking about as far as hardware, and safety and mechanisms?
Yeah, so a couple of the other speakers have alluded to things like heavy metals and also temperature control as well. So I can speak a little bit more to that. Certainly temperature control is really important, you know, to protect the oil and get, you know, make sure that we're not having any harmful substances coming from the oil. Also from a hardware point of view, you know, coming away from the very early days of vape technology, where people would take what would be designed for e-cigarettes and try and translate that to cannabis oil. I think the problems were that cannabis oil was much more viscous, and so you either ran into problems with leakage or clogging, or even worse, people would dilute the oils to make it work in the vape device, which is where we led to you know, the sort of medical vape concerns that we had. So we're kind of coming out of that, but also there's, starting in 2019, there was a big focus on heavy metals. Heavy metals is really tough to get around. I think the heavy metals, when I'm talking about heavy metals, are things like lead, nickel, chromium,
In the hardware.
zinc. In the hardware, yes.
Yeah.
But it can exist in everything. All these things are naturally occurring, so it's very, very hard, difficult to filter out, even in the oils as well. You know, it's very easy to get contamination. And you know, we try and use as the best materials we have possible, and also make sure that we, you know, have consistency and traceability for those materials, so that we know exactly what we're getting and purchasing. But you know, it's, even if you use surgical grade stainless steel, and you put some of the cannabis oils in, like Michael was alluding to, some of the terpenes, limonene, is very corrosive. So it the problem with the testing that they have is it's also very time dependent as well. And so if you left the oil in there for a certain period of time, 6 months, you would eventually get some kind of leaching of these metals into the oil. And that creates a little bit of a problem with the test houses, because it's so sensitive. It does mean there's a lot of uncertainty from test house to test house. So I think, you know, having a good relationship with the test house, and for them understanding the variability of the tests is really important. The next step is to you know, the difficult job is to educate the consumer on the risk factors of heavy metals as well. And I think, you know, eventually we might get to the point where with federal level of regulation, that those test standards become consistent across the United States. At the moment, we're having to tackle slightly different test methods, different test houses from state to state, and also the legal limits as well are vary. So it makes it very difficult from the hardware producer to kind of navigate that. Yeah, it's kind of, you know, it's difficult, but it's something that we can all work together to kind of, you know, with you know, a larger body to kind of maintain consistency and work towards that consistency and messaging towards the consumer as well.
Yeah, the vape crisis was pretty intense and tragic.
Yeah.
But sometimes, you know, bad things happen and there are silver linings. And in my view, there were a couple. One of them was transparency, that the consumers' acknowledgement that it's really good for them to know the farm, how things were produced, the brand, and that everything is pure and there's no additives at all. I mean, I think that really brought people's minds around to understanding that whole process, like farm to table. And I think that really started promoting the COAs on the retail end, right, Sally? I mean, I know that Bloom does, when you go to Bloom's website, as in any quality product, you should be able to find the COAs.
Yeah, so transparency is really important. I guess what I don't want us to lose sight of something really important. A lot of the vape issue existed through the purchase of illicit product, which is basically the purchase of street product. And really, like, the legal market took a huge hit for the ills of an illegal sales. And so there's two things that we should really be keeping in mind here. We have highly regulated, high quality product in California. I can only speak for California, but I know the other markets work very, very hard and run many of the same things that we do, right? Regarding what we test for, how we test for it, et cetera, et cetera. But we have a legal regulated product. To be honest with you, consumers should not have to worry and should not have to delve into what farm did you buy your marijuana from. It should be enough that they're buying from a legal regulated market. So what I really find in this whole vape thing that has been glossed over and ignored is the incredible lack of regulatory enforcement and the insane taxation that exists in the cannabis industry. Those two things combined, the absence of closing down illegal dispensaries where consumers are buying illegal, untested, dirty product, combined with the fact that taxation on the regulated product is so high that that it's fueling more and more sales in the illegal market. Why go to a dispensary and pay 30% more when you can go to an illegal dispensary or your guy and get it for 30% less? So as a brand, we did a tremendous amount with education. And in fact, we also did a tremendous amount alongside a handful of other brands regarding lobbying and keeping regulated legal markets from shutting down vape. And explaining to them, listen, you shut down the legal, clean, regulated vape, and all of your medical consumers that use vape for medical reasons are going to the illicit market, and now you're compounding your problem. So from a transparency and a brand perspective, the COA, just to like circle it all back, the COA and the transparency of the consumer is a piece of it. but also the amount of money that regulated markets and states have pulled out of the cannabis industry. Some of that money really should be used on public education and should be used to highlight where are the legal dispensaries in your town and in your neighborhood, and what's the difference between, how do you know a legal market from a legal store from an illegal store? And equally as important, shut down the companies that you know are diverting product to the illicit market. Shut down the grows that you know exist, all over the state that are fueling, fueling product bought in parks, right? So as much as this is an issue, I have to be honest, like for us as a brand, the industry as a whole took a hit in Q3, but as a brand, our sales really didn't drop much. And it goes back to trust and integrity.
That's why. And that's what happened with every brand that I knew in Washington State that had a pure, clean product who was suffering because their prices were higher with these other lower quality products. But a lot of those lower quality products all had additives.
Yep.
And then once that happened, then those people who were suffering financially by doing it right ended up doing better because it's based on ethics and based on providing a high quality end product, which again, it's an industry supposed to be based on health and wellness. And if your brand isn't focused on that, then you're doing something different. You're not part of this industry. You're making some other industry.
But we're headed into another issue, which is going to be part and parcel along the vape crisis for a different reason. We now have COVID. We have millions of people on unemployment. We see incredible downward pressure in the California market for pricing. A lot of price-sensitive customers. A lot of people that rely on marijuana for medical purposes that are challenged with their own personal economics. And if we don't address the taxation issue, we're going to find a lot of those consumers migrating to the illicit market just for price, because they're price conscious at the moment. So, and once you divert to the illicit market, who knows what other ailments could be coming up as a result. And it isn't just vape. I mean, people are ingesting edibles that have the same levels of toxicity, but because you're not inhaling it, you don't, it takes longer, or you see the pathway to that differently. So, I think that brand integrity matters, but there isn't anybody on this panel that would disagree with the core exercises that everybody needs to take to run a real market. But I would really encourage anyone on the webinar to reach out to government and encourage them to address taxation and address enforcement.
Yeah, I mean, you cannot be, I will say this, you cannot be involved in this industry as a business and not participate in the politics of it, because this whole industry is based on politics, like a lot of things, but especially this. But I want to thank you all for participating. I wish we had another hour because this is a huge topic. I would love to have gotten into the extraction end of why that whole vape crisis happened. But we're going to go to Q&A now.
Awesome. Thank you so much, AC. Yeah, thank you so much. Hi, everybody. My name is Louis. I'm one of the VPs here at the Arcview group. Thank you so much for your time and attention, both for the panelists and for everyone in the audience on this call here today. And now we're going to bring up just a few questions with the time that we have remaining from the audience. And first, I want to apologize. There's several hundred of you on this call. We've had dozens of questions come in so far, and we wish we had all day.
Hour.
Exactly, I wish. But unfortunately, we won't be able to get to all the questions. And so I'm not trying to intentionally exclude you. I'm just trying to pick the most broadly applicable questions. But, AC, to what you were saying right at the end there about getting a little bit more into, the why of the vape crisis that happened in Q3. This is a question that I want to pose to all the panelists here. To also your point, AC, about getting involved in politics, I had the pleasure of addressing the California legislature at one of the public forums that they had around Q3 Thank you.
Thank you.
Did that along with the California Cannabis Industry Association. We had a whole contingency there. But we went out to really try and address the vape crisis issue. And one of the things that they pointed out was that it was a uniquely American phenomenon, right? You didn't see any spikes or as big of a spike in Canada, for example, or in the EU. But this leads me to my question, right? Did we ever get down to specifically what it was that caused the vape crisis? Was it the oils? Was it the hardware? I know Pete touched on if you leave the oils in the cartridges, it leads to leakage and perhaps some corrosion. Is there something about the heating element there? We know that Colorado has banned MCT, but there's some literature that says PG might have some role there. I mean, did we ever get to the bottom of what exactly was the issue?
I can tell you how it started. And it started from bad extraction methodologies and cutting corners. And so what they would do, because and it's also a legal issue, as Sally brought up, where, there were states that didn't have vape pens and they really wanted them. They were new, it's exciting. And so it opened this door for the illicit market to supply all of these states with these products. And so they were trying, the more you extract to get THC, the thicker and thicker the oil gets, because you're taking out a lot of the terpene profiles, you're taking out the viscosity of the oil. So they started adding in other things to do this. And they started doing this around 2012. And we were like, stop trying to focus on THC and focus on the terpene profiles, but they started thinning it. And so they did it for greed. And they did it just because they were trying to get high THC profiles. And that's all I'm going to say. And I'm going to leave it open for other people to speak.
Sure. Michael, I think you're muted there.
I was given one of the first vape pens to show up in California, and I immediately rejected it and didn't carry it in my dispensary because they were basically copying e-cigarettes. And they were using cutting agents that were like PG, that were popular. And just the basic research I did on the toxicology of PG and its safety is for inhalation just showed this is a really bad idea. And that just extended. That's extended all the way through vitamin E acetate. I used to walk in downtown LA and they would have chalkboards out on the street saying, come in and get your honeycomb.
And that turns into formaldehyde vapor at a certain temperature, right?
Yes, it does.
I mean, it's very bad.
I mean, some of the other things too, I mean, just to keep in mind, I think that cartridge technology changed over time also, and there's different aperture sizes inside the cartridge, which enable you to fill the cartridge with oil that's more viscous or less viscous, so that there isn't, you don't need to deal with that. I mean, so we have, we don't use any cutting or filling agents on our THC side or on our CBD side. And what's really interesting is on the hemp side, because most CBD products our vapable products are sold inside nicotine smoke shops. Almost all of our competitors have highly thickened product. And hemp oil, just for those of you, cannabis oil is extracted with a thicker viscosity. Hemp oil extracts naturally at a thinner viscosity. So most people have to thin out, or we're looking to, with early technology, thin out their cannabis oil and thicken their CBD oil. But if you're running the right extraction methods at this time, and if you are using the right kind of hardware and the right aperture size, you don't need to do that. I think to this date, we still have one of the only CBD vape products on the market that has 0 additives, thickening agents. It can be achieved through extraction and hardware.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think one of the things that the whole entire industry really has to focus on is trust. Mm-hmm. The trust in the brands, trust in the products, mission driven. I think there's just nothing more important than that. And if we could all get together as an industry and do a nationwide marketing campaign like the dairy industry does with Got Milk, we can we can do that.
I mean, so mission driven is super interesting, right? Because mission driven in cannabis has evolved in so many different ways, from Last Prisoner Project to farm related project to food related project. There's so much to be had there. It seems like brands are taking that on an individual basis based on their core values, their brand promise to the consumer, the communities they operate in, et cetera. More so than any other industry I've ever worked in or ever seen. The philanthropy and give back in cannabis is very high.
Yep. Oh, you just gave me chill bumps.
Absolutely. I think so many people recognize that this is definitely a movement before it was an industry, right? It's definitely a political movement, and that's not something that happened in tech, for example, or clean energy, or well, maybe clean energy, but like traditional tech or anything like that. No, absolutely right. Speaking on the idea of collective action and really getting together, there was a question from one of the audience members asking about, do any of you panelists here expect that regulatory authorities might require safety studies on terpenes and cannabinoids? And is there any sort of, is the industry getting together to produce these collectively? Are there any resources, groups, et cetera, that you could point our audience to if they're interested in that space?
Well, Portland State's really on this, and the truth is that NCIA and the other organizations that really are on the sharp point of the spear should coordinate efforts with ongoing studies, because honestly, these research groups could use the input from our industry because we really know what these how to characterize these products, and so that'd been my 2 cents.
Yeah. NCIA, the National Cannabis Industry Association, we work with them very closely, and you're definitely right. They organize these great events in DC, well, back when you could do in-person things, to lobby on behalf of the cannabis industry.
I heard the chair is really cool too.
Oh yes.
I'm the former chair of the board.
There you go.
The
former chair is cool too.
former chair is even better.
I think if we're also really honest, the United States is pretty far behind with research. And there are other countries that are doing far more and have greater latitude because of their administrative support from the top down. So, I mean, I know that one of the first reasons I got involved in medical marijuana back in the mid 90s in California was because of involvement with the Parkinson's Foundation and research coming over to California from Israel, right? So, and that's back in 1996, 97. So there's a lot of evidence. There are definitely, while we might not see things, we might need things to move faster in the US, we do have other resources outside the country. And to be honest, many of these organizations are coming in, taking the genetics and plants and processes that we've worked really hard to create, taking them back to their country, working on patents and intellectual property on our, innovative industry, doing research on them and selling that research back to us in the form of pharmaceutical products at some point. Yeah. So,
any organizations, groups, things like that, Sally, that you'd like to point to outside the United States that's really leading on the research front on cannabis?
Not that I feel comfortable about.
All right, no worries. I won't put you on the spot.
There are a lot of them they're specializing in particular kinds of research. I mean, that's kind of the way it's done. I mean, the first time, I think it was 5 or 6 years ago, I was in Israel at an event and heard about the advancements of cannabis helping bone marrow transplants. They found that out accidentally, and that turned into a study. And that is one of my pet peeves, Sally, is why we don't, obviously it's because the FDA, but why we don't utilize studies from other countries, because there are a lot of them, but we have to always reinvent the wheel here. But I do know that there are a lot of startups happening on just data and collecting data on genetics, the genetics of the plant and the genetics of people, and creating so much anecdotal evidence that it helps to get around all of these clinical trial necessities, because as we all know, there's never been a death from using too much cannabis. So it's not like, we have to have a clinical trial to prove it's safe. We just need clinical trials on particular illnesses and how that works with people's genetics, and hopefully move to a place where we're treating people, that this industry affects the medical industry, and we get away from one pill to looking at the individual and treating them from that way. That's what I get excited about.
Well, thank you so much, AC, Michael, Sally, Pete. Thank you so much for participating in this discussion today and all of your lovely insights. Audience members, please do stick around. We still have a few more minutes, including Jake's sponsor corner and insights from BDS Analytics as well. But again, thank you so much, AC, Michael, Sally. Let's bring Jake, our VP of Business Development, up, as well as Pete Duckett, Chief Engineer of Greentank Technologies, online for Jake's Sponsors Corner. Over to you, Jake.
All right, thanks, Lewis. Pete, it's a pleasure to have you on today for the final episode of season 1. Can you provide us with a breakdown of what products Greentank manufactures and a little history on the brand?
Sure. So, apologies. Greentank mainly manufacture. Well, we mainly sell our disposable and cartridge vapes devices for oil. We also have a dab rig as well for the waxes and shutters that we talked about in the previous webinar. And yeah, we've been operating since 2016. It's an interesting story. I think it came out of the as cannabis was being legalized. People were openly using devices, and I think it was founded by the Koffler brothers, and discovered that the hardware that people were using was kind of translated from the e-cigarette devices, and we talked about how the cannabis oils were more viscous, and so the hobbyists of the users were running into problems, and that was a problem that was Greentank looked out to solve. We needed to design specific hardware for the cannabis oils for the relevant high viscosities that you get with that, and it evolved into, obviously that was a problem that everyone wanted to solve, and so the business took off from then. From 2016 to 2017, they were mainly selling the M7 and the Spectrum, which is the disposables, and the Spectrum 510 cartridges. And it was so successful, they managed to secure some seed round funding in 2018, about 3.5 million US, and it's just been growing from there on out. So 2019 was a Series A funding, and 2020 was we needed to, basically they saw a lot of opportunities to really do something with hardware. They had and that's essentially what caught my eye after speaking to the CEO and meeting the team, where they had so many ideas, and certainly it involves airflow, fluid dynamics, heat transfer, all the things that I know that I've had expertise in, but I saw great opportunities to be able to add value there and do something amazing with the technology and be innovative. So I think watch this space when it comes to hardware.
Sure. And how has the transition from a global tech giant, Dyson, been into the cannabis space, and why did you make the jump in the first place?
Yeah, so I've spent 16 years at Dyson, and it's taken me all over the world. Started in the UK, so it was a UK company, and then was in Singapore for 10 years. But my background was mechanical engineering, but I worked and managed and grew R&D departments filled with many engineering specialists. Again, as I said, in terms of the physics involved, it's fluid dynamics, it's thermal, it's heat transfer, and it was, I'd had a hand in developing the heaters and the bladeless fans in the past, and I was like, okay, well, this is interesting. We can do something with this, but I think all through my career, it's all been about solving problems, and I think I'm really behind the cannabis industry, and I really think that vaping is certainly the way forward in a lot of ways in terms of consumption. But I saw an industry that was in the very early days, and I immediately saw things that we could do with the hardware with the electronics that would dramatically change the experience and improve the product overall for people. So that was really exciting to see, and then it was a great opportunity to then go, wow, you know, we can work together as a team, we can grow the team, we can you know, invest in R&D, which we're currently doing. We started our first device lab which is kind of probably one of the only device labs in North America, and you know, continuing to focus on quality, but just bring new innovation to the hardware space.
Sure. And what can our community do to help Greentank grow? Are you looking for clients, board members, investors, advisors?
Yeah, I think we're always looking for good partners and brands to work with. You know, we are a white label, we are ODM. So what we tend to do is we don't grow the product itself. We work with licensed producers. So we're always looking to work with more of those licensed producers, especially those that really care about their product and their oils. And you know, we are trying to get people to move over from the black market over the legal market, and as that happens, you know, we're willing to work alongside those licensed producers and tailor our hardware to their oils, which I think is really essential to maintain the safety, the quality, and also enhance the experience as well.
Tailoring the hardware to their oils. I've never heard of that before. I love that.
Yeah.
Well, Greentank counts notable firms like Casa Verde amongst its strategic investors. So we all know you must be best friends with Snoop. If you could design a vape for any celebrity in the world, who would it be and why? We always got to do a fun one.
Any celebrity in the world? Wow. Actually, I would like to pick someone that's not a traditional cannabis user. Snoop's obviously he's created his persona around the consumption of cannabis, but you know, where I see a real success in what we've done is managing to convert someone over to the use of cannabis. So I think, yeah, maybe if I saw you know, a well-known politician smoking vaping our products, then we know we've done well there. Yeah.
Well, we can ship a Greentank unit to 1600 Pennsylvania and see what happens, right?
Yeah.
Clearly, you're innovators in the space. You know, Greentank is a leading brand, and I don't want to jump the gun before any press release comes out or anything. But can you share a little bit more about any new developments, key partners, or tech that you're spinning up?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. No, I until we can kind of release the patents and trademark stuff, you know, it's very tough to put. You know, my lips are sealed. I don't even tell my own family members either. But we are working, you know, really hard on some great ideas. I think, you know, we highlighted the importance of safety and quality, and to improve the experience. So I think generally across the board, you know, we're looking at new ways of doing things, you know, new materials, new configurations, etc. It's really important. I think we've got a huge amount of expansion. I did mention the device lab that we had in North America, but we want to double down on that and expand so that we've got the capacity and the people with new ideas to bring to that, and try and execute on some of those ideas. So some really interesting stuff. You know, and having everything under one roof and in-house in Toronto is going to allow us to iterate faster. And the industry is moving quite quick now. I think it's been stagnant in some areas for some time. You know, as these problems come about, and you know, people come around and they try and solve them, and that leads to sort of rapid developments. And so we need to keep ahead of that and keep pace to that. So having all these expertise under one roof and the expansion of our R&D means that we can iterate faster and get things to market as quick as we can.
Excellent. No, I'm pleased to hear that. I feel like having that lab in-house is you know, going to be a game-changing innovation for you guys. Well, what is the best way to get in touch with you? And can you tell me a little bit more about this offer you're running?
Yeah, so best way to get in touch, obviously, you know, go to our website and they've got some various contact details there. So sales@greentank.com. And in fact, you know, everyone has taken part of this this webinar, and the Arcview event is entitled to 10% off their first order. So there's a special thank you to anyone watching or listening here. That's offers available all summer.
That's very kind. Well, it's sales@greentanktech.com. And once again, big thank you to Pete. I think this was just a great conversation today. Appreciate it, of course.
Great. Thank you, Jake.
From here, I'm actually very pleased to be turning things over to Roy Bingham, Executive Chairman and Co-founder of BDSA. So Roy will share some insights and data from BDSA related to our top of the week, vaping. All right, Roy, take it away.
Thanks, Jake. Hi, everybody. Thanks for hanging in there. So great discussion. I thought we'd do what BDSA usually does and bring some facts and figures and data points about the vape market and its recent developments. So I'm going to share screen because I always have a few slides tucked away, as most people know. Here we are. So let's have a little look at the vape category and how it has been progressing. First thing, let's anchor ourselves in how the market has been doing this year. And these are very exciting numbers. You know, we are seeing very rapid growth in many of the mature states. Look at the spectacular growth that you're seeing in Oregon, over 50% in May of this year. This is overall growth of the licensed legal cannabis space. You can see similar growth rates in Arizona as well, and accelerating during the COVID-19 period, which is what you also saw in Oregon. And even Colorado, which is of course a pretty mature state by now, mature states you might expect 5% to 10% growth at the present time. And you're seeing Colorado with 30% growth there in May. Now, sadly, California tends to consistently disappoint expectations a little bit, but it has been growing. It's just not growing as rapidly as most people expect for a lot of reasons that many on this call are very well aware of. And then Nevada had a tough time with dispensaries being closed down and then with delivery only, but it rallied in May, only slightly behind the previous year. And we'll have due numbers for our clients out in a couple more days. So concentrates have always been a strong driver of growth. They were the main driver of growth until Q4 of 2019. As you can see here, concentrates, of course, suffered from a deterioration because of V-Valley or VapeGate or the lung disorder concerns. And you can see they're beginning to pick up. And they represent a substantial share of the market. This is some larger mature states, as you can see here. And they're vying with Florida as an important part of the overall market. They're as little as 22% of the market in some states, as you can see here across the spectrum of states for which we have very, very detailed point of sale data. This is 1 billion transactions processed through the system. And as much as 45% of sales in some markets. That should never happen. Your phone should never ring while you're talking. And you can see it's settled down to about 35% in the mature states like California, Colorado. I'd count Arizona, although a medical market, a very large medical market, and a mature market at the present time, and Oregon, of course. So that's what we're expecting, and that's why we're very interested in the concentrates market as a continuation of these sorts of trends. Now, when we talk to consumers, tell us that they like loose leaf flower or bud, as you can tell from the sales expenditure, and they use it and consume that way. And they often prefer, so over 50% prefer flower. However, the next category is vape, whether it's cartridge or a disposable vape. And you can see that it's a high percentage that consume, almost 40% of consumers. And in fact, in Q1 of this year, it did rise to 40% of consumers. And you can see that it's their preferred method in about half the cases. Well, that's rather interesting because when you look further down the list at mainly dabbable consumption methods down here, you can see that although many consume through those methods, very few of them choose it as their preferred method. So very, very important category of products. Now, if we skip forward to what happened, and we heard earlier on in the call about what happened in August of last year, really in terms of the decline in sales associated with consumer concerns, you can see a significant decline in, this is the share of vape state by state out of the total market. So it was very high in California, it was over 30% of the market. So that's the vape portion of concentrates, and in California, it's about 70% of all concentrates are sold for vape consumption. And you can see it dropped over 5 points and has continued to decline. But this is not all a negative story, as I'll explain in a moment. In other states, you can see a little more stability and a significant decline in Colorado as well. However, it's because sales are going up across the board very significantly. And if you look at the last 3 months, especially post the COVID lockdown, etc., you can see that California has very significant growth in vape sales, as is the case in Colorado. And in fact, all the other states except Nevada has had its blip. So there is a recovery in vape sales, and consumers are coming back to this, this delivery system with enthusiasm. Now, vape price trends have declined. Prices have declined. This is what you expect to see as the market matures. And they have declined in a similar way, really, to what's been going on with dabables in these major markets. I also have to qualify within these major markets, because you'll see significant differences in markets like Illinois and Massachusetts, which are more to do with supply constraints than they are with what consumers are actually purchasing. And you can see that vape sales have been beating dabables in terms of the relative growth, especially recently again. So it's an exciting product opportunity. That's just a tiny bit of data. Thank you to those of you who stuck with us for some facts and figures. And please come to bdsa.com if you'd like some more information.
All right. There we go. I'm back. All right. Well, I can't believe we're at the end of season 1. What a wild ride. We've had everybody on in this industry. I mean, as a Detroit guy, seeing Isaiah Thomas was a highlight. I can't even believe we had Greentank back-to-back, Transact first. I mean, there's just been an endless spree of great sponsors, great speakers, and of course, big thanks to Roy and BDSA. Getting their insights, getting down to the data, I think is one of the most valuable things we do here at Arcview.
Thank you, Jay.
Now, a webinar survey popped up while we were talking today. We would really like for you to hear, to share your thoughts around today's webinar and learn what topics you want to see for season 2. Now, visit arcviewaccess.com for all the latest activities and events here at Arcview. This will be posted, of course, the same webinar very shortly. We have 2 new things to tell you about: our Discovery and WIN memberships. WIN, of course, is our Women in Cannabis Networking Association. Go to arcviewgroup.com/win to learn a little bit more about those. Now, we also have our new Cannabis Investing First Base, which is a 4-part course, an education series, our starting point for anybody new to cannabis. And I'm sure sales at arcview.com can help you get set up with what you need. We have some upcoming events, both in person and digital, which always is a little bit of a trip to say, but open to the public tomorrow on July 30th. We're going to have a virtual tour and Q&A with Dark Heart Nursery. For those who are down at our LA Forum in Santa Monica at the Fairmont, you might remember Dark Heart. From there, we also have on August 3rd, Cannabis Marketing, Promoting an Offline Product in the Online Era, presented by Cannabis. I'm so excited about this. Cannabis is an Israeli marketing firm that's been crushing it with regards to helping those brands obviously advertise within the cannabis space. They're leading a hands-on workshop. So for all you in the comments, all you with great questions on workshops like these, on our roundtable discussions, you're part of the discussion, asking questions, getting feedback. So join on August 3rd to learn how to market your company from Cannabis. August, as we might have mentioned before, is Hemp Month here at Arcview. And our highlights are on August 13th, we have Arcview Access Special Edition release of the Hemp in China report. Yeah, hemp in China, CBD in China. We're talking about processing and cultivation with our partners over at Asia Horizons. And then now on August 19th, Arcview Access, another special edition one right here, Cannabis in FinTech with EMC, the Emerging Markets Coalition. We'll be sharing another special report about what's happening on the financial side of cannabis, banking, payments, XYZ. And of course, August 26th, Global Hemp Day. We're co-hosting this one with Canatech Global, a full day long. It's going to be a gauntlet to say the least, but we have, I think, 30 countries represented talking about the global hemp market. For our members and guests only, live and in person, join us in the Hamptons, join us in Sagaponack for our VIP soiree. This is on Saturday, August 16th. And of course, this one is members only and their guests. Tickets are filling up, or slots are filling up fast. Tickets are selling out quickly. And of course, we're following all social distancing guidelines. There's PPE, there's separation. So we're not going to throw any issues like the party over the last week. Special offers from our guest today. Bloom Farms has a special deal on their CBD products. Use the code ARCVIEW20 for 20% off your order. And the offer expires at midnight tonight. Love Bloom Farms. You got to check out the replay, of course, for a special product offering. We're going to have that kind of dropped into the end from Perfect Blends. And of course, for those who've already forgotten, cannabis destroys your short-term memory. Greentank is running a 10% discount. So anybody watching or listening on their first Greentank order, it's valid until the end of summer. Just email sales@greentanktech.com. And as a final reminder, visit arcviewaccess.com for more information on all the great ways to engage with Arcview and its community. Also, get $100 off the Arcview State of Legal Cannabis Markets 8th edition. We got a members only after party starting right after this. So thank you all again for joining today. And I will see you in season 2 this September. Thanks again.